My name is Jeanne Norris, and I work at the Institute for School Partnership at Washington University here in St. Louis. Today I will be teaching science for 3rd grade, but learners of all ages are welcome to join me. I'm so glad you're here with me today so that I can share something really special with you. This is our chicken coop. What do you think? Should I let the chickens out? Do you want to see them? All right, here we go. Come on, girls. They love coming outside to eat the grass and the bugs that are in the grass. Follow me, I want to show you something. Every day we open up the coop door. Oh, and look at what we find. I was not expecting to see a chicken in here. What is she doing in here? That's a good question to start off with, isn't it? Okay, so normally when I open up this coop door, there's no chicken there, and I find, do you know what I find? Eggs. And we collect the eggs every day. So let's go ahead and go inside and see what we can notice and wonder about our chickens that we raised from baby chicks. Okay, we're back here. There's no chicken anymore to surprise me. And I do see what has been left behind. So come here and take a look. In these nesting boxes, we find eggs. And then we gather them every day. My chickens didn't always look like they did in the video that you just saw. Here's a picture of when they were just about 4 days old. This one was the one that you saw in the nesting box that surprised me. It's called a golden laced Wyandotte. Then we have the sapphire gem chickens. They're the gray ones that you saw. Finally, we have these little guys. They're called Plymouth Barred Rocks. And don't tell the other chickens, but they're my favorite type of chicken. Remember, if we want to figure something out, we've got to do 2 things: notice and wonder. That's our first steps to being able to figure something out. So I'm going to show you a simple way that we can chart together how to notice and wonder and keep track of the things that we notice and wonder. So here we go. We're going to draw an eye for things that we notice. Things that you notice are observations that you can see with your eyes, for example, hear with your ears, touch, things like that, okay? So that's what we notice. And then we have what we wonder. These are questions that we have about what we notice. So you can make that simple chart at home anytime you want, really, and then you can be noticing and wondering. We can make it a T-chart. So let's go ahead and think about what you notice and wonder about the chickens that I just showed you. Remember, I showed you that they were a teeny tiny chicken, baby chick, and then they were a chicken that was laying eggs. So what do you notice and wonder about the chicks and the grown chickens and the eggs that they lay? What do you think? I notice that they look really different when they're little. We could say when they're babies. Their feathers looked different. They were smaller. They just looked all around different. They didn't have that funny red thing on the top of their head or underneath their chin. They didn't have that when they were babies. So we can even say that detail. We can say, you know, that funny little red thing, it's called a comb, and the funny little red thing down here is called a wattle. So we can say no comb or wattle. And then they looked fluffier. Okay, what else did you notice? Let's see, I noticed that the grown-up chicken was nesting in the box. She was laying in there. And then one more thing that I noticed, they lay brown eggs. Okay, so those are some good observations. Maybe you have more that you would add to the list. What would you add to this list? Okay. So now we're going to think about some things that we wonder because of what we notice. So you heard one of my wonderings right there outside when we were looking at the chickens. I was surprised to see that chicken. And so I said, what is that chicken doing there? And that's a good question to ask. Okay, we need some more questions. What are we going to ask? Maybe we can ask, why do they have a comb and a wattle when they're grown-ups? You might be wondering, how long did it take them to grow up to lay eggs? Okay, what else? What questions would you add to this list? Let's see. Maybe why do they have different types of feathers from baby to grown up? Okay, this is a good list, but there are probably lots more questions we could add and lots more observations. So if I want to start to figure out the answers to some of these questions, we have to explore. So I want to show you what it was like to experience the baby chicks growing up over the past 4 months from springtime until now, and what that was like for our family to watch. Are you ready to see what they were like? They were so cute the whole time. Well, maybe not the whole time. I'll show you what I mean in just a second here. We got our chicks at the end of April when they were about 4 days old. Look at how fluffy and little they were. They were super cute, but a lot of work. Even though they were a lot of work, we loved observing them and watching them grow. You can take a look at how they are exhibiting some behaviors that are going to be helpful to them when they live outside. They really like to peck at the ground at the bottom of their cage that we kept them in. What do you think they're looking for there? Maybe some tasty bugs that they weren't going to find right now, but this skill serves them well outside now. These first downy soft feathers really don't keep the chicks warm, so you have to keep them under a heat lamp. In May, they started to get some little teeny tiny feathers, and it was warmer, so we could take them outside. See the little tail feathers that are starting to form? And then they get really, really scruffy looking. Oh my gosh, this is not a very cute stage if you ask me, but it's a process they have to go through. They have to shed all of their first feathers, those soft downy ones, and get new grown-up feathers. Eventually we started letting them outside more and more because the weather got warmer and they got bigger. By June, you could even see their combs and wattles just starting to form. Then in July, they really started to form their combs and wattles. You can see the red things that are forming on their chins and their heads. Wayne really likes to hang out with the chickens. As they got bigger and bigger and their combs and wattles got redder and redder, we knew that the time was getting close where they would be able to reproduce or lay eggs. And then one day it finally happened. About 4 months after we got the chickens, they started to lay eggs, and that is a really exciting moment. The chickens exhibit some pretty interesting behavior in their nesting boxes. Listen to what they sound like when they're about to lay an egg. So we just saw some really beautiful images of the baby chicks as they grew up to become fully grown chickens over the past 4 months. And now what I want us to do is to make some scientific drawings of what we see. Now, scientists use drawings in a different way than artists might. Artists have a lot of liberty to kind of make different decisions about how they imagine something in their head and how they can change real life to be things that are fantastical and beautiful and just a little bit different than what your eye actually sees. And that's really cool. But scientists can also use drawings too, and they can use them to communicate information about what they see. Now, photographs are great now that cameras exist, but a long time ago when those inventions weren't around, then you might have a scientist that was actually drawing what they see while they were in the field doing their observations. And actually, scientists still have field notebooks that they use and draw in, because sometimes drawings can really show you things that a photograph just doesn't really capture. So the thing of it is, if scientists want to make drawings, the drawings have to be 5 things. And there is an A, B, C, D, E, easy way to remember it. They have to be accurate, meaning that it has to be what the thing actually looks like to your eyes. They have to be big, so you don't want to take up just a tiny spot on the paper. You want to take up as much of the paper as possible. And they have to be colorful. You want to add color so that people can understand what you actually saw. And they have to be detailed, so even the tiniest details can be really important. And they need to include explanations or labels. So those are the things that scientific drawings might have, and we're going to practice it together. If you have a piece of paper, you can do this with any object that you find in your house, and you don't have to do it right now, you can do it later. But if you have a piece of paper, you can draw with me. And what I want you to draw, and what I'm going to draw, is a shell, a seashell, okay? So you might have an image of your head of what you think a seashell looks like, and I want you to draw that now, okay? I'm going to draw it too. Okay, did you draw it? Maybe I'll add some detail there. That's what's in my head, okay? Now I want you to come here and take a look at how I'm drawing, okay? Okay, so here is my seashell from memory. Not bad. It's a little cartoonish though, and not really exactly what a real seashell would look like. And if you would try to say, you know, what seashell is that, people might not really know. So what scientists might do is have the actual object next to them. So I'm going to show you an example of a seashell that we can use. How about this one? Okay, so here's a real seashell. And I'm going to try to draw it. So I'm going to make sure that my drawing is big. So I took up a little bit of the paper here. So now I'm going to try to take up more of the paper. Let's see. That's pretty good. It's not perfect, and scientific drawings don't have to be perfect. So if yours isn't perfect, it's okay. But we're just trying to get the best idea that we can of what this seashell actually looks like. So this is a good start for the shape, and it's bigger than my original drawing. So I'm going to try and make it now as accurate and detailed as possible. And so I have to look really close if I want to do that, right? So I'm going to look really close at this shell and try to understand everything that I can about the details of this shell. And I notice that there are these lines going across it. Okay, so I'm going to try to draw those, and they're really tiny. We'll just keep going. Okay, Now, when I look even closer at this, I can see that there are these tiny notches. So if I really wanted to be specific, I would draw those tiny notches that are all around that seashell. And that might take me some time even. I'm going to use a little movie magic to speed this process up. Now that took me some time to do, but I think it was worth it because I think that this seashell looks really cool. And so it's accurate, it's pretty big, it's detailed, and so I'm gonna, maybe write some explanations. So I'm gonna say, this is a seashell, and it has like tiny notches. And I'm going to draw a line to show the tiny notches, and that it has layers, what look like layers to me. And so I'm going to point out a couple of the layers. Okay, so I'm labeling some parts of my drawing. And now I want to add some color. So I don't know, what do you think? What colors would you add? What colors would you add here? So I'm going to try to find a marker that is kind of like a grayish color. So let's see what I've got here. And if you look carefully, it's not gray all over, not at all. It's just gray, maybe down here and maybe a little bit up here. So I'm going to try to add that color to my drawing. Okay, so that is my seashell drawing, and it's not perfect, definitely not, but it's pretty close, and I did my best to make it accurate, big, colorful, detailed, and explained. So that's how you make a scientific drawing. So here's my finished drawing of the shell before and after. What feedback would you give me to help me make my drawing even better? Next, I wanted to draw what I saw with the chickens. First, they are an egg. My chickens lay brown eggs. Next, they are a chick with the fluffy downy feathers. After that, they're called a pullet. That means that they have some of their feathers, they've grown a little bit. They might still have some of their scruffy old feathers, and their comb is just starting to form. And then they're called a hen or chicken, and they're fully grown. At this point, they can begin to lay eggs. What do you think? Are my scientific drawings accurate, big, colorful, detailed, and explained? I used what I knew about scientific drawing to make a drawing of the life cycle of the chickens. And I chose my favorite chickens, the barred rock. And so what I want you to think about is the idea that scientists use models to show what they know. So models can be drawings. So what I've made here is a model of the life cycle of a chicken. And you can see that it starts with an egg, and then they become a chick that is very fluffy and downy and doesn't have its real grown-up feathers yet and doesn't have a comb or a wattle. And then it grows into a pullet. Pullet is a young chicken, so it has some real feathers now, but still some scruffiness and just a little bitty start of a comb. And then after about 4 months, it becomes a fully grown hen. And you can see the comb here and the wattle, and that's a great sign that it's a fully grown hen. And at that point, it can start to reproduce or lay eggs, and then the cycle can start over again. Now these chickens will live about anywhere from 5 to 10 years if you're lucky. And so that is called a life cycle. When we talk about something's birth, growth, reproduction, and death, that is a life cycle. And so this chicken's life cycle is made into a model that we can see. Now, scientific drawings can be used to help us compare things. So what I'd like to do next is show you a different life cycle that my son made based on something else that we observed. So let's take a look at what we observed. It's a monarch and its life cycle. Have you ever seen a monarch butterfly flying around? Let's explore its life cycle. At first, it's an egg, and it's so tiny you can barely even notice it. Here's my son's drawing of the egg. Then it becomes a caterpillar, and eventually it will form this J shape when it's ready to form its chrysalis. The caterpillars grow several times, and each time they shed their skin until their final shedding when they become a chrysalis. A chrysalis is green. Here's how my son drew it. I think it's really beautiful. But then, over time, it becomes clear when the butterfly is ready to emerge. And then, out comes the butterfly. So next time you see a monarch, I hope that you think about its life cycle and maybe try to draw what you see. So I was super proud of my son for drawing those pictures. I think that they had all of those A, B, C, D, E's. Accurate, big, colorful, detailed, and explaining something. So let's go ahead and take a look at how the chicken's life cycle compares to the butterfly's life cycle. When we make models, we can use them to compare two different things. So with the chicken, what do you think? How would you say that the chicken's life cycle differs from the butterfly's life cycle? What differences do you notice? Well, I noticed that the chicken never really looks that different. Like, even though the chick and pullet and hen each have like bigger features or smaller features, they still have like a beak and wings and legs and eyes. Whereas with the caterpillar, it has these different features than the butterfly that make it look very, very different. Like, if you didn't know any better, you might not even think that these two animals were the same thing. So that's one difference. What else do you notice? I noticed that the chickens definitely do not have a chrysalis stage. So the chrysalis stage, that is something that is very unique to butterflies because they undergo what's called metamorphosis. And the chickens don't do that. How about some similarities that you notice? What do you notice that is similar between these two things? Well, I noticed that they both come from eggs. One is very tiny and one's bigger, but they both come from eggs and hatch from eggs. Anything else that you notice? They both grow. So they go from chick to pullet here and from caterpillar to chrysalis here, but that's still growing in some way. What else? They both reproduce. So this butterfly will lay this egg and this chicken will lay this egg. So that's reproduction. And another thing that they both have in common is that they will both end their life cycle someday and pass away. So all living things have this in common. And let's see if we can chart that here. So we can write birth, we can write growth, and we can write reproduction. Birth, growth, and reproduction. And we can write the same thing over here. We can write birth, we can write growth, and reproduction. Oops, I need more space. Birth, growth, and reproduction. They both are different organisms, but they both share these patterns of birth, growth, reproduction, and death in their life cycle. Pretty cool, huh? So we hopefully learned a lot together today. I know that I had a lot of fun sharing my chicken adventures with you, as well as our caterpillar and butterfly adventures. We really love looking in our backyard and thinking about how things live and grow. So what are some things that you can do at home to have this same kind of fun that we have? I would say start by making some scientific drawings. And remember to do those 5 things that we talked about. Make it accurate, big, colorful, detailed, and then explain it and explain what you drew. That's a great thing. The next thing I would do is go outside and then try to make some scientific drawings of living things that you see outside. And if you can even try to find the life cycles of the different living things. Maybe you'll see some eggs somewhere, maybe a bird's nest full of eggs. Maybe you'll see something, if you're really lucky, you'll see a caterpillar in its chrysalis. That would be amazing, wouldn't it? So you can see those types of things, and then maybe try to draw the life cycle yourself if you can. What does it look like when it's born and when it grows, and how does it reproduce? You can research that. If you have a pet in your house, do you have a pet? If you do, if you have a dog or a cat or a fish or a frog or a turtle or a hamster, whatever you have, you can research the life cycle of that pet and think about how it follows that same pattern that we talked about here today. All right, well, that is the end of our lesson for today. I had a great time exploring animal life cycles with you, and in the next episode, we're going to think about plant life cycles, which are really different and interesting. So I hope that you keep noticing and wondering all week long. Hopefully you'll try out some of those scientific drawings and get really good at it. You never know, maybe someday you'll be drawing illustrations for a science book or something like that, or be a scientist yourself and draw pictures of what you see in the field. But in the meantime, keep on noticing and wondering, because that is the most important thing that you can do. All right, see you later.
Teaching in Room 9 is made possible with support of Bank of America, Dana Brown Charitable Trust, Emerson, and viewers like you.